Hi, welcome to Profoundly Speaking. I'm Undrai Fizer. I'm happy to see you, happy to hear from you, and hope that all is well with you. Um, I pray that you are experiencing greater clarity for the journey. And I'm going to tell you something. This is a pleasurable journey. It's unpredictable, but it's solid. But I'm explaining from my experience. And if you are seeking to replicate my experience, you're going to fail. But no one can replicate yours. And no one can keep you excited, empowered, and energized than you. No one can do it but you. But you know all of these answers. Every week when I connect with you guys, you know these things. There is nothing that I'm speaking that you don't know about. You are familiar with the journey. You are familiar with the miracles. You are familiar with the purpose. You are familiar with the disciplines. You are familiar with it. And if we're all so familiar with it, why do we get so many different results? Some good, some bad. If we're following the examples to the core, how do we get a different outcome? When we buy cake mix or cake recipe, and the picture of the outcome is on the box, and then on the side of the box or in the back of the box, there are the instructions at how to get the name of the cake that's on the box. So if we follow the directions to the T, without shortcutting the recipe based on the price, we should get the same result that's on the box. If I buy a cake recipe and end up with fish, something's wrong. And if I begin to see the fish and I say, I thought I did it right, it's like, no, somewhere the instructions took a turn. Wasn't the devil. You may have been distracted by something. You may started off cooking cake and got on the phone and someone started talking about fish, and then all of a sudden you inadvertently pulled the fish out the freezer, started frying the fish or put it in the cake mix or something. I don't know. It means you were not concentrating on the example. Now, today in Fundamentals to Kairos, we were talking about something in 1 Samuel chapter 5. It was very interesting how we could put this together. And I'm going to take you back on this journey. I'm glad that you joined me today. But I don't want you to just simply join me. I find it frustrating when we join in the broadcast and we write down the answers as they're given, but yet we're in the middle of the lake still going in circles as a result of even writing down the answers or the solution to the problem. You ever notice how frustrating that is? That while we are sitting here listening to the solution and writing them down and even typing them, that we are still going in circles after the answer has been provided. It's like, wow, how do you do that? Before I read the scripture, I'm going to say this. Every solution from God does not require a process. I want you to write that down. Write it. Here's another answer to write down. God doesn't lead us on a 40-mile journey for an answer. The answers from God is never alone. It's never time-consuming. The children of Israel prayed for 400 years to leave slavery. God sent them an example. Now, from Egypt to the land of promise was approximately 9 days to 2 weeks. They made a 9-day journey, a 9-day trip, a 40-year journey. That wasn't God making the answer long. As they were in the wilderness, the gods that they allowed to remain in their heart kept them in a circle because they never rid themselves of the gods in their consciousness. So they saw the example, but the gods within them caused them to continue to disrupt the example. And therefore, the trip turned into a 40-year journey. Every solution is not a 40-year journey. It's not a 20-year journey or 15 years. God got me on this for 15. God don't have you spinning your wheels for 15 years. Once I make him the main thing and the one thing, I achieve that one thing in his time. And God's time is never 40 to 50 years to get anything. Now, before I read the scripture, how many of you have made the present the main thing and the only thing? See, when Jesus taught the kingdom, people loved his analogies and his power. But what many despise is his non-conformative principle. I'm the only way. He would say, I'm the only way to it. He would cut out the flexibility. He would cut out the options. He would cut out this. He would cut out the back way. He was a beautiful teacher who exemplified, I'm the only way to it. And when someone begins to destroy the options by saying it's this way or none, it creates this thing that keeps us from exploring other options and conveniences. The kingdom is a non-convenient reality. The kingdom is not a teaching. The kingdom is an extreme, excellent focus to within. The kingdom is the oneness of God. It's not exploring the options to God. It's the oneness of God. It's one main presence. It's the one thing for this one thing. How many of you follow what I'm saying? The solutions are not long, but when we have many voices living in us, it takes a 9-day trip and expands it to a 40-day reality, a 40-year reality. And the thing is, just about all of them died off. They never achieved it because they never rid themselves of the extra voices within. So it's crazy to be on writing the answers and then still say, I'm trying to see. You just wrote the answer. What are you trying to see? When you write the answers, you say, okay. And you say, you know what? I'm still here. Why are we still here after writing the answer? It's do the answer. Listen. Write that down. Do the answer. He didn't say feel it and do it, because sometimes the Spirit will provide a solution whether we feel the solution or not. If I'm sinking, if I'm in the water, if I'm, God forbid, if I'm in my boat and it turns over and I have a life jacket on, and a guy with a purple boat pulls up with a rope and say, grab the rope, son. No, I don't like the color of your boat. I want my friend Squeedo to come and pull me out the water. I'm like, it don't matter. The answer is the answer, whether I like the boat or not. So if we're writing the answer, if God is giving us the answer, what makes us continue to spin around in the middle of the sea in the journey? God's solutions are never long. But when we have other voices existing within us, we could turn a 9-day trip to the promised land into the 40-year journey going in circles. Am I making sense? Do the answer. All right, let me read this, and I won't hold you. 1 Samuel 5, verse 1. After the Philistines captured the ark of God. Now we're going to stop right there. The Philistines were the main nemesis to the children of Israel. The Philistine was the main nemesis, the main enemy to the children of Israel. Another superpower against Israel. The same that you can look at political superpowers now, the United States and Russia and different things. I'm not bringing in politics, but I'm just trying to give you a spectrum. Now, whenever the children of Israel would go out to war, they would carry that ark with them, because that ark represented the presence of God. Now, it was a physical contraption that contained the commandments and the budding rod and different things from the miracles that happened with Moses and Aaron and the children of Israel. And inside of that thing, it was blessed artifacts, but it served as a living physical presence of God, the presence of God. Now, guys, before I keep going, what is the presence of God? Because we say it so much till it becomes a buzzword. So I want you to write that down. The presence of God. What is the presence of God? Because when you say something so many times, it loses the significance and it just becomes letters. It just becomes words. You know, the presence of God, presence of God. Look, what you are saying something, the presence of God. Write that down. So in other words, the Philistines, somehow after a battle, that they found the ark on the battleground. After the Philistines captured the ark, they took it from the battleground at Ebenezer. They took it. The enemy took the presence of God. The enemy, the Philistines, David fought the Philistines. David fought Goliath, who was part of the Philistines. Samson destroyed the Philistines. The Philistines was the main nemesis of the children of God. So therefore, I want you to paraphrase this. The nemesis of my life stole the presence. I'm a paraphrase. My enemy, my main nemesis took the presence of God, took it from the battleground at Ebenezer to the town of Ashdod. Verse 2, they carried the ark of God. They carried the presence of God. They carried the ark of God into the temple of Dagon, and they placed it beside an idol of Dagon. In other words, the enemy took the ark, took the presence, and brought it into their house and sat it next to their idol. They took the presence and sat it. The enemy put the presence in his own heart. Now, I'm paraphrasing. I'm gonna go back and forth. I'm not trying to be a historian or a theologian, and welcome everybody who's on. I'm going to paraphrase this, okay? The enemy, my unbelief, took this presence of God and I added it to what was already existing in my heart. I took this presence and took this word, I took this truth, I took it and I put it next to a God that I didn't rid myself of. It says and he placed it beside the idol of Dagon. Now, verse 3, but when the citizens of Ashdod went to see it, let's go and see how it looks together. Dagon had fallen with its face to the ground in front of the ark. So what did they do? They took Dagon and put him back in his place again. When we put the truth next to what's in us, it knocks it down. But what do we do when we're still in love and when that God is still important to us? And I'm not talking about the kingdom of God. I'm talking about whatever is not first, whatever is extra in our life, whatever that is, we put it back. God knocks it down. We pick it up and put it back. Have God ever knocked something down in your life? A belief, a sincere habit which produces nothing? Because sometimes we are addicted to our sincere habits. I'm thinking I'm doing it right, but it's not producing the result, but I'm addicted to just doing what I do because it's still my way. Do you feel what I'm saying? Has God ever knocked down your idol and you picked it back up? Has he knocked down something that needs to be clear from you, but you picked it back up again because you're trying to coexist with the truth and with everything else? How many of you can say that the divine life is your main thing? Because when you have one presence in your life, you hear clearly. You can't understand your purpose when you have different voices existing within you, because you're not going to know which one is talking to you. And I'm going to tell you something about these idols. I'm not going to just name different ones. What's an idol? Which one could mine be? I'm not in you. But whatever it is in you that's hindering you from following the main thing, those idols don't want to leave. I'm going to tell you this trick about idols. They would give you creative ways to work around them, because idols know our pride. And idols will let you say, I'm working on it. How can you work on your life when many voices are still living in it? The first thing to do while you are working on it is to get rid of the extras. But the extras, the idols will let you work around them. You see, the children of Israel were supposed to make it from Egypt to the promised land in about 9 days, a week and 2 days. But their idols empowered them to work around them until it pressed out into 40 years. The answer from God is never long. But when you have a presence of your mama, your daddy, your cousin, your friend, your relationship, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your side piece, your other piece, the side, whatever it is. Because I'm going to tell you something, we tricksters. You'll wait for me to call out something and look to find what I said. When you know what your idol is, and your idols will empower you to work around them, but you can't free yourself from idols if you keep picking them up and putting them back in place. Am I making sense? The next verse says, so they took Dagon and put him in his place again. But the next morning, the same thing happened. Dagon had fallen face down before the ark of the Lord again. This time his head and his hands had broken off and were lying in the doorway. Only the trunk of his body was left intact. You see, our idols must lose their hold over our mind and over our actions. This time the idol fell and his head was cut off and his hands were cut off. How many of you are still putting your old idols back up? Because those idols may be good. But when God, and we could talk about idols and stuff like that, but this is the real gist of this. Is the kingdom the main thing in your life? Not one of the things, but the only thing. Because when the kingdom, listen to me, not a sincere hope for God, not I'm trying my best, not I'm human. See, that's the thing that makes us despise the principle, because it wipes out the long journey to convenience and making up your mind. We don't like the kingdom because it disrupts that long attempt to think about it. When you read the scriptures, and Jesus would say, follow me, he never said, I'll wait for you. Jesus would go and say, follow me now. Jesus didn't believe in, I'll wait for you. Now, Jesus will die for you, but when it comes to the kingdom is much different than him dying for you. The kingdom is the oneness to the mind of God within. The kingdom is not salvation. The kingdom isn't grace. And the kingdom isn't Jesus died on the cross for sinners. Salvation is I'll die for you, and you're qualified enough for me to die. You're not so bad that I won't die. But the kingdom has nothing to do with if anybody's bad. That's the thing. We wish it was, but it has nothing to do with anybody being good or bad. The kingdom determines the authenticity of the heart. The kingdom reveals if there is extra voices inside of your consciousness. The answer is get rid of your gods. Whether you feel to get rid of them, or whether you are comfortable with getting rid of them, or how do you get rid of them? I'm trying to find out how. There is no classes, so how do you get rid of what you don't need? You get rid of them. How do you get rid of? And after a while, we make an excuse. How do you get rid of the voices? Because when you feel that they are legitimate, you will keep them. Whatever voice you feel is legitimately justifiable, you will keep it. That's why when the God fell, they put it back in place. Why? It was important. They put it back in place. They didn't leave it on the ground because they felt it deserved to be sitting back up. Now, we're writing the answers and hearing the answers. What's taking you this long time? Because any solution from God is not a long one. God doesn't believe in stretching out your life just to stretch it out to show you he's God. Just take this and go over there. You see, we read all of the verses in Leviticus and Deuteronomy and Exodus, and their unbelief is what added to the verses. It probably should have been one chapter. But their unbelief spread it out to many chapters. Maybe this situation in your life was only supposed to be one page, but you've made a one-page reality a 200-page discourse. It was only meant to be one page. It was only meant to be half a page. Unbelief and the gods in our life can prolong our frustration. Am I making sense to you guys? Oh, is the king? See, how do I know this is the Lord when I have other voices existing in me? When I'm blessed, how do I know it's the Father who gave me this blessing? Or was it one of these idols that gave me the blessing in order for them to earn their way into my life so I won't evict them? My idols will bless me so I won't cast them out. Write that down. My unbelief will bless me so I won't cast it out. And you know it's unbelief, and you know it's an idol. You know when we're trying to coexist between holiness and our flesh. Whenever the flesh is told to leave, you notice how sad we get? Because when we haven't found pleasure in the one main thing, whenever the flesh tells this thing to leave, we get sad. Because we feel our joy is a coexistence, a peaceful, tolerant coexistence between our sacredness and flesh, between unbelief and belief. We usually want God in our life to empower our unbelief. So the enemies will steal the presence of God, because the Philistines knew whenever the Israelites had this ark, they won everything. So if we can steal their secret, you understand what I'm saying? See, your unbelief may want to steal the secret. So if I could get the wisdom of God over here and flatter it, maybe this God will empower my real desires. Am I making sense, guys? Am I making sense? Yeah. You know, when we don't have pleasure in our sacredness, because when we have to cast out the limited thing, we get nervous and we get sad and we're not ready. Because that thing can't cast out God. God is casting out that thing. And since God can't be cast out, we will leave the presence of God. We will leave the teachings. We will not follow the example, and we will feed ourselves the things that those other voices say. Now listen, you guys are writing the answers down. You guys are discussing the answers. Y'all discussing answers and still lost in time. That doesn't make any sense, because religiosity will have us sitting down discussing our deliverance and we still lost. Religion, oh my God, will have us discussing the manual and still entrapped. Religion is powerful because it feeds from your pride. Religiosity is powerful because it feeds the other gods in you. Religion feeds the other gods that still exist in my soul, because Jesus said, I want to be the only one. Hey, I'm going to say this. Is this divine life the only life you got? Because if it's the only life I have, where will my distractions come from? I can't be distracted when it's the only one. Jesus said before he died on the cross, he says, behold, the prince of this world has come, and he could find nothing in me. Can the prince of this world come and find nothing else in you but the voice of God? Because when the presence of God is the only presence within you, where will your distractions come from? You're only distracted when there are many voices in you, not outside of you, but in you, in your emotions, in your memory, in your sincerity, in what you think. Because when we have many voices, we don't follow the example. What are we following Jesus for if we have other gods in us? Why are we following Jesus with other gods? See, we are just as inconsistent. See, we're not inconsistent because we don't understand. Because the teacher teaches too deep. You can't understand for many. You can only understand for one. And when you have multiple gods in your consciousness, you can't understand the one voice, because each God is telling you what the voice means. You are getting a different interpretation based on the many idols of unbelief and thoughts and conveniences that still exist in your life. Remember, the children's journey to the promised land was not designed to be 40 years. It was designed to be a week and 2 days. Some historians say 5 days, some say 2 weeks, but it wasn't designed to be 40 years. Unbelief kept them going in circles with the answer. With the answer. So if we are writing the answer, excuse me, if we are steadily writing the answers and still in the hole, your other gods don't want you free. Your other gods or the other things that you love in your heart don't want you free. And you don't want to be free because you want to carry them with you. Remember when Moses went up into the mountains and he was up in the mountains before the Lord. And the first thing they did was say, build us a God. They wanted Aaron to build them what was already in their heart, but build something we can see. Build something, and they begin to tear the place up. We want a God. And then they built this calf, golden calf, and they began to say, this calf took us out. This calf freed us. This thing did it. Now, you might not be building a golden calf, but there is another voice in you. Some memory, some emotion, some belief. You know what it is because you're steadily writing the answers and still in the hole. And you can say, well, you know, I don't know. It's this. It's no. I'm going to ask this again before I go. Is the kingdom the only thing in you? Is the kingdom the main thing? Write this down. I see y'all writing on here. I see you writing. Is the kingdom the main thing? And you can say, I want it to be. I want it to. See, that's how sincerity would answer. I want it to be. But it can't be the main thing amongst many. Jesus had a truth that had no room for nothing else. So therefore, his focus was intimidating. He was a beautiful, compassionate spirit, but his focus was intimidating because that's the only thing on his mind. And you know you can't turn him. There are people you know you can't go tell him that. You can't tell him that or her because you know he ain't gonna do it. Because they are built to know one thing. And those type of people, we say, man, come on, free yourself, loosen up. Those people, we say, loosen up. You ever told somebody to loosen up because it looked like they only wanted that one thing, and if it wasn't nothing else, that was it? And you say, come on, loosen up. See, when you have many voices in you, you're going to be too loose. And so you really can't walk in oneness when you're too loose in yourself. How are you going to honor yourself when you have multiple voices living in you? The answer is, have you gotten rid of your idol? Because your idols will let you work around them and make you feel like you're getting better. Yeah, you hear what I'm saying? Idols will let you work around them and make you feel like I'm progressing. You're not progressing when idols are still in its place. Listen, guys, don't mean to hurt your feelings. You are not progressing when idols are still in your life. You think that's what we're trying to do? You think that's what we're trying to do is work around them when we say I'm working on? Are we working on removing the idols? Or are we working on trying to develop ourselves and find authenticity amongst them? If I'm making sense, raise your hand. I see your comments. Yeah, religion to have you discussing the map without being free. My God, write that down. Religion will have us discussing the map while lost. That's fruitless. And I'm going to tell you something, that's torment. To sit there and look at the way out and still trapped. I'm looking, I see the way out. I'm still trapped. What are you waiting on? Do the answer. I can't, but see, sometimes the answer isn't our answer. See, I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna go. Many of us are not wanting to leave our idols. We're seeking a spirit to help us be more happy with all of them. See, God is wanting to free us from the idols. We don't want the idols gone. We just want all of the idols to get along. Most of us don't want to leave the idols. We just want the conviction to leave. We don't want to feel the conviction of having many in us. So we're looking for a way to lessen the conviction. We want the freedom to let the many voices remain in us. But because we have many alternatives remaining, we're tired of hearing the voices that's telling to choose. And so it's hurting us. And we're wondering how come there is no peace within us? Because you have one voice that seeks domination over everything. So we want a peaceful coexistence of the differences that exist within us. We don't want one to be better or right than the other. And we want to honor the belief systems of all of the idols that still existing within us. No one's right or wrong if we just learn a peaceful coexistence within them all. But once you place the presence of God next to an illusion, it's the illusion that's going to fall down. So why did you pick it back up? Why? And it's not what you were taught to do. It wasn't what you were taught to do. It's not what you thought to do. Why did you pick that idol back up and put it back in place? Why did you do it? Why did you pick it back up? Write that down. Why did I pick it back up? Yeah. The answers from God are not long. We make them long. Our unbelief and our desire to work around the idols expands the process. It increases the length of the process. Because I'm trying to find a way to keep it without it leaving. I'm trying to find a way to schedule it. And so we feel that if we can devote some time to God too, it fixes it. But see, if I have to make time for God, He doesn't want it because it means He's not the time giver. See, whatever is the main thing is what passes out the time checks. Whatever is the main thing is what allots the time for everything else. If I got to make time for the Spirit, it means it's something else passing out the time checks. And God is not an employee of your life. God is the employer of your mind. How many of you could say that the Spirit of God is the employer of your mind? Which means God writes the check. He determines the schedule. God controls but see, that's the thing we don't like. We want room for many. You understand? Yeah. Yeah. I'm the way. I'm the truth. I am. Hate that. Hate for it to be the only way. I might not want to take that way. Because we feel that God takes us on the long way. When really it's us that makes the way long. If we follow it, we're right there. It's us not wanting to do it that way. I think you get the gist of this, right? So before I go again for the 100th time, is the kingdom life the main thing? Is it the only thing? Go ahead and write that down so you can read it and read your answers. Is God's presence the only one in my life? Because when God's presence is the only thing, I'm not distracted because that's the only thing there. That's the only thing I hear. That's why Jesus said, my Father and I are one. He's the only thing there. We're trying to be like Jesus with many gods. You can't be like Jesus with many voices in your life. I'm just trying to be like Jesus. Well, the first thing in order to be like Jesus is to have only one voice in your soul. He's not telling you to be nice like him. Your other gods will let you be nice. Just don't get rid of me. He'll let you get somebody food. Just don't get rid of me. He'll let you devote time to helping people. Just don't get rid of me. The thing is the voice of God the only thing there? Is the kingdom? Okay, now you're writing the question. Now answer the question. Is the presence the only thing in my life? And if the kingdom is not the main thing, you just discovered the source of your problem. You can look back and say, well, since I was a child, you can say, people, when they talk to me this fast, don't talk so fast. I don't like that. You can say anything. If the presence of God is not the main thing, that's the problem. I'm not the problem. Your cousin ain't the problem. Your job ain't the problem. If the kingdom is not the main thing, you just found your problem. If the presence of God, if the divine voice is not the only thing, you just found your problem. So I just gave y'all an answer. I just gave y'all an answer. How much is that answer worth? How much is that answer worth? I just gave you the answer to free your spirit. Listen, I just gave you the solution that would free you. Tell God thank you. I just gave you the secret to set you free. Isn't that incredible? But I just made people mad because in order for God to free us, we got to remove idols that we love. And so now I'm trying to see, is there any other way? What's wrong with them? What's wrong with them? I don't see nothing wrong with them. You don't see how late you are from your assignment. You don't see how unsure you've been. You don't see how fearful you're living. You don't see how broke you are in life. You don't see it, or have you changed the narrative to say, well, everybody's like that sometimes? See, your idols will give you different ways to shift the narrative so you won't feel as bad. You say it's common. Did I make sense, guys? When your idols stay too long, they will teach you what to say. They will take away the grief from you. And say, well, it's just normal. It's just how it is. I'm telling you what I know. I just freed you. I just spoke something that will free you right now. I told you religion is powerful. It'll let you discuss the plan. It'll let you read the map and still go in circles. Yes, that's right, Grace. Yeah. Now, I can't teach your will. Your will won't listen to me. Your will listens to you. Your will are those other gods. And it's not God's job to take them down. Because once God is in you, they're going to fall down. But once they fall, why do you pick them back up? I'm Undrai Fizer. I'm glad you joined me today. And if you want to invest, why don't you invest? And the information is on the ticker, or if you have our app, you can go to the App Store and download our app, Fizer Interglobal, from the App Store or the Google Store. And you can give in the Invest Financial link on, let me see, I don't want to say the wrong thing. You can invest financially in the bottom part here, okay? I'm Undrai Fizer. Prayers for you. But the answer is remove the extra voices. Because if the kingdom isn't the only thing, you're going to go everywhere. God isn't obligated to lead you to a promise full of weights, full of idols. I don't know why we think God's going to do that, but God is not going to take you and your idols to the promise. God's not going to take you just because you're sincere and your extras to the promise. Okay? Love you much. Peace.